Check, 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 check. Hello, hello, internet. I'm tuning in here to start my live stream. Just want to check if everything is working. Am I visible? Am I audible? Let me know. Suomi, what's up? Let me know if I'm live. Okay, good to hear, Tim. Thanks. I just ran up the stairs, so I just gotta catch my breath here for a sec. So before we're gonna start this thing, which is me reviewing all my amplifiers. Well, basically discussing all my amplifiers. If you want to hear me play my actual amps, then you got to check the videos on my channel, because I'm not going to be able to play 47 amps in one video. That would be nuts. Before we start, there are a couple of awesome videos coming to the channel soon. One of them is a video about me trying to sound like Korn, which is going to be very cool, a lot of fun. Also, a video about the neck illusion stickers on my 9-string, and also a comparison, a high gain comparison of the mini rectifier versus the Mark 35, and a cool little high gain blind test comparison between the XFX3 and the Helix, just for fun. So that should be interesting. So stay tuned for those videos. And for everybody who's tuning in right now, thank you for joining me in this wonderful live stream adventure. So I'm sitting on the floor on a bunch of pillows right now, so that everybody has a clear view of my amplifier rack. And I have a tablet here where I can read everybody's comments. So I'm going to try to also respond to your comments while I'm doing this stream. I have some water here. I have some food, some nuts, a lovely assortment of nuts, I must say. And if you're going to stick around for a while, I'll recommend that you do the same. Grab some drinks, grab some nice food, and let's do this. Let's talk about amplifiers for as long as we need to, okay? So I'm just going to start right now. And I'm going to start with, let's see, I'm going to start up here in this corner, and I'm going to work my way all the way through the whole rack. And I think I will change the angle of the camera a little bit to make you guys so that you guys can see all the amplifiers that I'm talking about. Okay, let's have some fun. And if you have any questions about the amp that I'm talking about in that moment, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them, because it's always fun to interact with you guys. All right, enough babbling, enough banter. Let's get this started. So we're going to start with my Mesa Boogie dual rectifier, one of my favorite amps. Sure. I mean, for years and years and years, I can remember being intrigued by the rectifier, because some of my favorite artists use it. For example, John Petrucci used it back in the day during the Train of Thought era, and the Glass Prison, and Metallica, and a bunch of cool nu metal bands as well. And of course, when I was younger, it was very much out of reach for me, because those amps are not very affordable. And so yeah, it was sort of this mythical amplifier for me. And then a couple of years ago, I finally got my used dual rectifier, which is over here, the black one. And this is like the early 2000s 3-channel one. And it sounds absolutely awesome. Some people say that, you know, the amplifiers, the rectifiers with the 2 channels are much better. I don't know. I've never tried one of the older ones, but I really like the sound of this one, especially the red channel on modern mode, because that's, you know, the sound. I did experiment with the power settings a while ago, and I did find that setting it to bold with the diode rectification sounds much better. It's much more punchy and in your face, for me anyway, for my heavy riffs and stuff. However, if you like to play leads, then perhaps changing those power settings up a little bit can work. The cleans are nice. The crunch tones are cool, but still rectifier-y, if that makes sense. And of course, the high gain tones are, mwah, love it. You know, some people hate him. Some people love him. I love him. It's one of my favorite amps. It does one thing very well. You know, it's not one of those amps that does everything well, but oh, it's so good at that. And no other amp in this collection can sound like it. I mean, the mini rectifier can sound kind of like it if you dial it in carefully. But it's a quite unique sounding amplifier, the dual rectifier. If you guys have any questions about my dual rectifier, drop them now, because otherwise I'm going to move on to the other amp. Jeff asks, how do you manage the fizz on that beast? Well, you got to embrace the fizz on a rectifier, to be honest. You got to learn to live with it. And also just be careful with the presence control. Don't be afraid to crank the treble, because it will open the amp up a little bit. Otherwise, if you lower the treble too much, it will get a little bit muddy, you know, and honky kind of, especially on channel 2, the orange channel on modern mode. I mean, the last time I tried that, I really had to crank the presence up all the way and the treble also up quite high. The Guitar Crypt, what's your favorite OD to tighten up the Mesa? Recently I tried the Pepper's Dirty Tree, which was awesome, but you know, any old tube screamer works well, especially with a mid bump, because it helps to sort of compensate that mid scoop that's always going on with a rectifier. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to answer all of your questions, guys, because then this will take a long time. So I'm going to answer some questions that are related to the actual amps that I'm discussing at the moment. Okay, so that was the dual rectifier. Now let's move on to the Randall RD-100. Now this amplifier is interesting. I actually got this from a viewer. He traded my Engl Ironball, the original one, for his Randall Diablo 100. The RD-100H is the number, I believe. And it's quite a cool amplifier. It has a very chuggy and sort of dry sound with a lot of string definition. It's not a super high gain amplifier. I did an in-depth demo and review on this amplifier, actually, where you can hear it in action with clean tones, crunch tones, and various high gain tones. And that was one of the things that was quite surprising to me about the RD-100. You know, it's not super high gain. It's kind of more like a crunch amp that's voiced like a high gain amplifier, but it does not have a ton of gain. It does have a built-in boost, which really helps to give it more push. And when you engage the built-in boost, sure, there's in that case there is enough gain, but it's not a super high gain amplifier. And it's also kind of dark sounding. Maybe that is to compensate the string definition and the clarity that it has, you know. So yeah, it's really a sort of interesting sounding chug monster, so to speak. Pretty interesting amplifier. This is the 100 watt version with 4 606 tubes in the power section. I need to do another video on this amplifier soon. I'm thinking about featuring it in a to boost or not to boost episode, which could be fun, could be interesting. I have to be careful though, because I don't want to use a boost that adds too much clang, if you know what I mean. It needs to be pushed by an overdrive that's sort of maybe the Pepper's Dirty Tree, and then with a little bass boost. That could be interesting. That could be interesting. I need to remember that. So that's the Randall Diablo 100, folks. Interesting amplifier. Yeah. I see one question here by Victor. I'm going to try to answer that real quick. Hello, I love your videos. Quick question. How do you get your DI tracks that you then use to reamp? Do you then treat your DIs in any way before reamping? That's a very easy question to answer. I just use my XFX3. There's a USB channel that has the dry channels always. I use that to record my DIs with everything I track, basically. And no, I never prepare my DI tracks in any way. Carrie Yang looks like heaven. Thank you. It is. Oh. Frank Fernandez. Whoa, this is like Avengers Endgame. Easily 3 hours. I don't know. I mean, I've already done 2 amps, and we're only 10 minutes in. So we'll see. We will see how this goes. It also depends on how many questions you guys are going to ask me. But feel free to ask me anything, and I'm going to do my best to answer as many questions as I can. But it's not going to be possible to answer all of them. And don't mind me snacking on my nuts, okay? Because I need some nuts in between. Johannes. Would love to see a Dover DA50 on your channel. Yeah, they seem awesome, but I've never tried one, and they are not very affordable, right? I could send an email to those guys to see if they, you know, are interested in a demo or something. Could be cool. All right, so we're going to move on to the next amplifier. Amplifier number 3. Oh, Frank Fernandez, what's your favorite hot-rodded Marshall amp? That's a tough question to answer because a bunch of my amplifiers are technically hot-rodded Marshalls. I guess my Friedman JJ Junior is a very cool hot-rodded Marshall. I mean, a bunch of amps are kind of that, but I'll just say the Friedman for now because that's like the typical hot-rodded Marshall, right? Craigslist Vent. What do you think about the 5153 Stealth? I've never tried one, so I do not have an opinion on that. Okay, let's move on. Amplifier number 3. The Wong's HD15. The Wong's. So not Wang's, Wong's. It's actually a Chinese family name. So they are made in China by hand. I have 3 of them, 2 up here as well. We'll get to those later. And they're made by hand by the Wong's family in their custom shop. And it's a great brand, very friendly folks. The people who I deal with over there are very nice and encouraging people. And this is basically a sort of clone of a Soldano SLO. And on the clean channel, sort of Bogner Shiva. So this is, by the way, it's a 15-watt amplifier, and it has 2 6 V6 tubes in the power section. So it's my only amplifier that I have that has 6 V6 tubes in it, which is interesting, and it makes it unique in my collection. Eduardo, yeah, man. I'm Dutch. So the clean channel is very bright, and it also has a crunch switch, and that gives it a very nice sort of Marshall-y sound. So it's quite versatile in that regard. And so, yeah, the clean channel is very bright. The crunch channel is very nice. And then the high gain channel is super cool. It's like, it's a very interesting and fat sound. So not very tight, not a very super thrashy metal sound by default. But of course, with a boost, you can make it sound super gnarly as well. But I really like the sort of big fuzziness that it has on big chords and thick, chunky riffs. So it's a very interesting amp. And to be honest, I would love the 30-watt version of this one as well. They also make the 30-watt version with, I believe, EL34s or 6L6s. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I'd love to try one of those. So maybe I'm going to get one of those in the future. But yeah, I need to use this one on the channel more. But I did a full in-depth demo and review on this amplifier as well on the channel. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's basically a very affordable Soldano clone with a Bogner channel as a bonus. So it's really quite a versatile amplifier. Of course, it's 15 watts, so it's not gonna be loud enough for playing on stage with a super loud drummer, unless you use a PA, of course. But well, great amp. Let's see. I'm going to check your comments for a sec while I eat my nuts. DirectX. Hi. I'm looking to achieve a Japanese rhythm tone. Interesting. These are less fizzy than American tones. They sing and have good mid frequencies. I'm going to use it when composing for a 2.5 D space shooter game. Interesting. Good luck with that. Tijn, is your collection mainly a hobby, or do you a lot of reamping and recording for others? Well, my YouTube channel is my main job, but I also do mixing jobs and reamping jobs and stuff like that, and media videos for various companies and stuff. If you're interested in me reamping some of your music or mixing some of your music, hit me up via Instagram or my email address, my Gmail, which is johnsimonsmusic@gmail.com. The Guitar Crypt. Is there any Wong's dealer in Europe? No need to worry about that. They ship worldwide. I got mine within a week or so. So if you order one, it shouldn't take too long. But just go to their USA web store website and just send a message if you have any questions, and that should be fine. And then they just ship worldwide. So you may have to pay some import duties. But since the amplifiers are pretty affordable, it's not going to hurt too much, right? Okay, questions. Okay, I'm going to try to do those questions quickly because I need to move on since we have like 44 amplifiers to go. Tyler, what DAW do you use to record into? Cubase 11.5 Pro. Christian Music Studio. I'm thinking on buying an Engl Fireball 100. I need an amp for lead sounds. Or what would you recommend? Oh man, the Engl Fireball 100 is absolutely amazing. One of my favorite amps. Daniel, which do you prefer more, the GrandMeister Deluxe 40 or the TubeMeister Deluxe 40? We're going to get to that in a minute when I discuss the Hughes and Kettner amps. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the next amp. We did the Randall, we did the Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier, we talked about the Wong's HD15. Now we're going to go to the Friedman JJ Junior. So I got this amplifier maybe like 6 months ago or so. It's my very first Friedman, and it's the only Friedman that I own. You know, Friedman amps aren't very affordable, obviously, and but I really wanted to have one. And then the JJ Junior came out, and it's kind of a high gain amplifier, which is nice because I'm a rocker. I like high gain, but it also has the BE mode, which is basically voiced like the BE 100. And it also has the clean channel, which is also nice with the bright switch, with 2 bright switch modes, which is quite a versatile channel as well, with a nice breakup, kind of like a Fox. And it's a 20-watt amplifier, I believe, 25 watts, 20 watts. And it has 2 EL84s. And it sounds really, really good. And when I just got that amplifier, I noticed that it was quite tight in the low end compared to some of my other amplifiers. I mean, some of my other amps, I'm used to some of those sounding like really big in the low end, you know, with a very fat low end with a lot of resonance and depth. And the Friedman is quite tight. And that's not because of the fact that it has EL84s in the power section, because I have a bunch of other amps with EL84s that have a huge bottom end. So it's just how it's voiced, basically. So it's kind of a mix-ready amplifier. And the double J, the JBE channel, I believe it's called, that's the high gain channel, the Jerry Cantrell channel, because obviously it's Jerry Cantrell's signature amplifier. It does not have a huge amount of gain, but it has enough for a nice chug, you know. So it's a very nice amplifier. It has a sort of distinct voice, so I would recommend trying one before buying one, or at least checking out some demos. But I really like it, and I also recently did a video on it with a boost pedal just to see how that sounds, and that sounded great as well. So yeah, I'm really happy with my Friedman. It's a lot of, I mean, Friedmans cost a lot of money, so I don't see myself buying another Friedman anytime soon. But I'm very happy to have at least one in the collection. I'm super happy with that. It's a cool little amp. Let me get some questions before we move on. Let's see. Charles, is that a Randall Satan? No, this is my RD-100, Diablo 100 that I just discussed. And by the way, guys, if anybody asks a question that is very easy for you guys to answer, please help me out and answer them. Because I've a lot of amps to go through still. But thanks a lot for joining me, by the way. This is already a lot of fun. Gabriel, hey John, what IRs would you recommend playing with the Friedman JJ Junior? Well, there are no rules, but of course the York Audio Friedman pack is, you know, very fitting. Ryan Cordaro, which mini head do you prefer, the EVH 5150 LBX or the Peavey Invective? The Peavey Invective. Yes, that's a great lunchbox amplifier, but we'll get to that one in a minute. Thanks for the comments, guys. Oh, JJ Dawn, sup, dude? I'm about to buy the Hughes and Kettner GrandMeister Deluxe 40 today. Awesome. You still liking it and using it? We're going to get to that amplifier in a bit, so stay tuned. I'm going to talk about the GrandMeister Deluxe in a little while. Thanos, hey, what would you choose, XFX or amp plus reactive load? Both. Both. Yeah, that's a long answer, but both. You know, for my final album tones, so to speak, amplifier plus reactive load is my thing. But the XFX is a great tool for recording demos and stuff like that, you know. And also Helix, the Line 6 Helix as well, is just great. Let me see. Okay, so I'm just going to continue for now, and I hope, yeah, I hope that I can answer as many questions as I possibly can. So we just talked about the Double J Junior, the Jerry Cantrell Friedman. Now we're going to move on to the Engl Fireball 25. Such an awesome amplifier. So I got this amplifier from the folks at Engl, and I bought it from them. And this was actually the exact same amplifier that Ola used for his video. He did a demo on it as well. So I guess he sent it to me, or they sent it to me after. And it's a very, very cool amplifier. If you're into that Engl sound and you want something compact, but still with a lot of balls and power, and you really can't go wrong with the Fireball 25. It has two 6L6 tubes in the power section. It has a clean channel that you can push to a nice overdrive. It has the mid boost control, and the lead channel, the high gain channel, is just so good. It's not exactly the same as the Fireball 100. It has a bit less gain. Maybe it has a tube less or something, but still plenty of gain. But you know, when I set my Fireball 100 to about 10 o'clock, that's the same as on the 25 at about 1 o'clock, if that makes sense. So it has about a third less gain on the gain pot, but that's totally fine because the 100 has way too much gain anyway. I did a full demo and review on this amplifier recently, by the way. Check it out if you're interested. So the clean channel is great, nice and sparkly. And like I said, when you want your cleans to have a little bit of grit, you can turn it up, turn the gain up to get a nice crunch. And when you want it to sound a little bit more British, like a Marshall JCM 800 type of sound, push the mid boost as well, and there you go. So it's very versatile in that regard. Great cleans, great crunch tones, and amazing high gain tones. And the cool thing about the Engl high gain tones is that they are also great for extended range guitars. So they are great for 6-string guitars, of course, very chuggy and tight and aggressive and growly, but also really nice for 7, 8, and 9 strings even. I recently did a video on my new 9-string guitar, my Schecter 9-string, and I used that my Fireball 100 with the 9-string without a boost up front at all, and it sounded super good. So if you haven't seen that video, do check it out. But that's the 100. We'll get to that in a minute. So if you guys have any questions about the Fireball 25, shoot now, because otherwise we're moving on. I'm just going to try to answer a couple questions before we move on. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. And thanks for all the support, by the way. I really appreciate it, because without you guys, I would not be able to do this. And that's a fact. Let's see. Marijn, hey John, wondering if you're playing in any bands. Well, not really, but I do have a project coming up, a studio project, a new band basically with a singer and a drummer, which is gonna be so cool. The first track is already done. Hopefully you guys will get to hear that in a little while. I hope it's gonna blow your minds. Let's see. Dan Yeoman, what Blackstar amp do you have behind you? That's an HT Club 50 Mark II. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Fixer, what's the best Engl amp you've played so far? Fireball 100, hands down. All right. Yeah. Frank Fernandez, what's the most underrated and overrated amp that you've tried? Hard to answer. Hard to answer. One question, I can't answer that question right now, but I'll try later, maybe. Floop-de-doo, sorry if it was already discussed, but since Wong's is a take on a Marshall, well, these two, the 2204 HW, which is the JCM 800, and up there I also have a Plexi. They sound very much like hand-wired vintage Marshalls, basically. So they do that thing very well with a lot of headroom and oomph. Okay. I've never tried a Savage. No, but I'd love to. Okay, let's move on to the next amp. So we just discussed the Engl Fireball 25, and now we're going to move on to the Engl Ironball SE. Another Engl. So Engls are awesome, guys. If you've never tried an Engl amplifier, do so, because they have a great tone. And in general, great for metal, but also versatile. Great clean tones, cool crunch tones as well. But the high gain tones, mwah, just great, especially for metal and tight extended range guitar tones and stuff like that. Now, I also did a full demo and review on the Ironball SE. It's a very interesting amplifier. It's a 20-watt amplifier with EL84s in the power section as well. And it's pretty loud, and it has a lot of balls, despite it being very tight sounding. It's probably the most tight amplifier that I've ever tried. So, you know, if you like those very tight boosted tones, you're not going to need a boost with the Ironball. Trust me, it's very tight. And the Ironball SE, it's kind of similar to the Fireball 25 in that it has the same sort of controls. So, you know, a clean channel that you can also crank to get a nice overdrive, and then the lead channel. But the lead channel has a bit more of it sounds kind of more as if it's already boosted by a tube screamer somewhat. So it's a bit more tight sounding. And the Fireball 25 is a bit more fat and filthy sounding. And this one reminds me a little bit more of something like a Mesa Mark. It's kind of focused, you know. And the Ironball SE has a bunch of features on it, like an IR loader and a delay and reverb and all sorts of good stuff like that. And it's a very cool amplifier if you want something that has everything in one box. And it's compact. It's great for studio work, you know. So that's a really cool amplifier as well. By the way, I also recently did a comparison of this versus this one. So the Ironball SE versus the Fireball 25. If you have not seen that video and you're interested, do check it out. So yeah, what else can I say about the Engl Ironball? It's a great amplifier with a tight tone. Let's see if anybody has questions about the Ironball. Nike, Stoyan, is it necessary to have that many amps? Asking for a friend. Yes, it is. Tell your girlfriend or your wife that it's very necessary to have a lot of amps. Trust me. And guys, if you have any questions about amps that I've not yet discussed, please keep them until I'm discussing that particular amp, because otherwise this is going to be a bit messy. All right, let's continue. So we just talked about the Ironball SE, the Engl Ironball SE, a wonderful, wonderful lunchbox amplifier that does it all. Now we're going to move on to the Laney IRT-SLS, I believe. Sorry, IRT-Studio, not the SLS. The SLS is the solid-state one, the 300-watt solid-state power amp version. So this is essentially the low-wattage version of this one, the Laney Ironheart 60. But we're going to talk about the IRT-Studio first, but a lot of things that I'm going to say about this amplifier are also true about this amplifier. So it's a 15-watt rack-mountable amplifier with a bunch of great features. I mean, the preamp in itself is very versatile. It has a clean channel. It has a rhythm channel. It has a lead channel. It has a sort of, I'm not sure if this one has that. Let me see. Like a wattage control. The Studio does not have it, but the big one does have it, so you can scale it down a little bit. But it has a sort of, let's see, the dynamics control, which is great for adding low end. It's basically a sort of depth control. And what I really like about this amplifier is that you can pull each of the EQ controls out, so to change the voicing a little bit, which is quite interesting. For the low control, for example, when you pull it out, the low end gets a bit bigger and lower in the register, basically. The treble control makes the treble region much more wide and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting amp in that you can really shape the sound to your liking. I like those sort of things. It also has a built-in boost, which is great for adding gain. It's not a boost like a tube screamer. It's more just to add gain, you know. I think it also has a bunch of other features on the back, like a USB out and stuff like that. But the basic tones are very nice, not quite different from the Engls, you know. The Engls are very tight and focused, and this one is very rock sounding, you know, big with big mids and, you know, more of a fat sound, which can sound really good in a mix, actually. Kind of sort of raspy in the mids and top end a little bit, but I really like that character, to be honest. It's kind of a cross between a Marshall and a 6505, kind of somewhere in between there. So yeah, very interesting. And this one is obviously 15 watts, so not mega loud, but great for recording at home and stuff like that. It's also very affordable. So if you're looking for a tube amplifier that doesn't cost much and can do a lot, then maybe the IRT is great for you. However, if you want it to sound very tight and aggressive, maybe add a boost up front or something like that. But yeah, it's a cool amplifier. Let's see if you guys have any questions about the IRT-Studio. How do the IRTs work with 7 or 8 strings? Judo Koala asks. 7 strings are doable. 8 strings, you would need to use a boost, in my opinion, to make it a little bit more tight and ferocious sounding. Not that it can't work, but they're not super tight and aggressive by default. So they are a good sort of starting platform that you can shape further with a pedal or an equalizer or something like that. Big Chocolate, have you ever tried a Friedman Pink Taco? I have not. I have not. Okay, so we just discussed the Laney IRT-Studio. Now we're going to move on to the Mesa Boogie Mini Rectifier 25, that little cute sucker over here. The Mini Rectifier. Well, yes. I already got this amplifier when I bought this one, but I'm just a huge rectifier fan and I wanted more, you know, and the Mini Rectifier just seemed so cute to me. It was really an amplifier that I really wanted to have in my collection. Great for recording, in my head at least, before I got it. And then I found it used in my own country for about 800 euros or so, and I snatched it, and I'm super happy that I did that because I absolutely love this thing. It's quite tiny. It's one of the smallest lunchbox amplifiers that I have. But it really does that rectifier thing. It sounds a little bit different than the big one by default, but the preamps on this one are voiced similarly to the multi-watt rectifiers, and those are also, they also have a slightly different voicing than the one that I have. So it's a little bit more mid-focused by default, but if you scoop the mids a little bit, boost the bass and boost the treble, then you can get it to sound pretty close to the big dual rectifier. The clean sounds are nice, and the pushed cleans are also kind of cool, very raw sounding. It's very bright if you play it on a lower level, but the 10 watt setting, I believe it is, makes it a lot more round and less bright sounding. So if you want to use it on lower levels, that's definitely something to try out. I did a full in-depth review and demo on this amplifier recently as well, so if you're interested, do check it out. I also compared this to the big one a couple of times on the channel, most recently in my nu metal guitar tone video, and I think that in that video I got it to sound really close to this one, actually. So when you put some effort into it, you can make it sound like the big one. But of course, it has two EL84s, so it does not have the amount of headroom that the big one has. But still, it's a great tone, especially for recording. If you want that rectifier sound but don't have the budget or room for the big one, this one will do just fine. Maybe not on stage, I don't know. maybe. Depends on your drummer and your speaker PA setup and stuff like that. But love the mini rectifier. So let's see if we have any questions. How do you compare the mini rectifier to the Mark V 2535? Great question. That's a long question to answer. However, I've already recorded a high gain comparison of the two, which will be on the channel soon. So stay tuned for that. John Barnes, does the mini rectifier sound more like the newer rectifiers or the older ones? It sounds the same as the newer ones. Let's see. Let's see if I have any questions. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. We need to keep this snappy. We've only done these amplifiers, so we have a bunch of amps to do. Now we're going to check out, let's see. That is the Hughes and Kettner. Is it the TubeMeister or the GrandMeister? Let me check. That's the GrandMeister Deluxe. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the Hughes and Kettner GrandMeister Deluxe 40 right now, which is a very cool amplifier. It's 40 watts, obviously. It has 4 EL84s in the power section. Sorry, I'm gonna eat some nuts. I need to eat. So it's 40 watts, and it's super versatile. I mean, if you need a compact amplifier that really does it all, with enough juice for a gig, because 40 watts will be enough. 4 EL84s, that's plenty for a gig. And so yeah, it has a bunch of great features. It has built-in effects like delay, reverb, modulation effects as well. A boost that's tailored for each channel. So yeah, and it has 4 channels: a clean channel, a crunch channel, a lead channel, and the ultra channel. So you can go from very clean all the way up to super high gain. And every channel really sounds kind of different. I mean, the clean channel is obviously great for clean tones. It sounds kind of like a cross between a Vox and a Fender-ish, nice and bright, and you can add some grit to it as well. The crunch channels are quite bright on the Hughes and Kettner amps, but in a good way. Bright and snarly, barky, great for those classic Marshall-y tones. The ultra channel is very mid-focused, I guess you could say. Great for rock and metal and for leads. And the ultra channel is kind of voiced like a rectifier, kind of loose and more scooped, but also great. And you can also control that thing via MIDI. So you can store your presets and everything, and you can control it via your iPad. And it has a noise gate. It has all that good stuff. A DI box out. You can use it for silent recording. It's also quite portable. It's not very big. It has quite chunky transformers in it, though, so it has a great and thick sound. So yeah, I mean, that's an amplifier that really does it all. It has its own voice. Sure, it has that sort of high fidelity sound, how people like to call it sometimes, the Hughes and Kettner tone. But it does it quite well. So if you're looking for something that really does it all and is great for recording, gigging, and all that stuff, then the GrandMeister Deluxe 40 is a great amplifier. Do check out my demo and review videos to hear how it sounds in action, though. So, do you notice differences sonically between the GrandMeister and the TubeMeister? Well, I have not compared them directly, but the lead channel on the TubeMeister is a bit more suited for metal by default. It's a bit more angry and tight sounding. That's the main difference that I noticed. Not that the GrandMeister can't do metal, but the TubeMeister is a little bit better for metal by default, in my opinion. I hope that helps. I'm just going to continue right now because, like I said before, I still have a lot of amplifiers to go. We're now going to move on to the orange portion of my wall. And we're going to start with the OR15, the little orange OR15, which is essentially just one of those orange Terror amps, but with the classic orange head shell around it. It's a one-channel amplifier. It's 15 watts with 2 EL84s in the power section. It has quite a wide range of gain, so it can go from very clean all the way up to super high gain. I mean, there's a lot of gain on this thing. It has that true orange character. It sounds fuzzy. There's a lot of mids. It sounds sort of fluffy and round. It's a great amplifier. Like if you're looking for an orange, an affordable orange with a low wattage that can really do it all, but with a very simple layout, then the OR15 could very well be for you. However, if you're not into that orange sound, then it might not be for you because it has a very typical orange sound, obviously. It's not the most aggressive. I mean, it has a ton of gain, but it's not the most edgy or aggressive orange that I have. But still, it's a very cool sound. So I highly recommend that amplifier if you're looking for a very simple orange amplifier, versatile but simple, or simple but versatile, I should say, with a low wattage, but with that classic orange head shell. Definitely check out the OR15. If you want to hear how it sounds, check out my videos. I did a bunch of videos. In fact, I recently did a comparison of all my orange amplifiers, 12 orange amplifiers in total on the channel. If you're into orange and interested in orange amps, definitely check out that video because it could very well be interesting for you. I did clean, crunch, and high gain tones for all of the amplifiers in that video. K Low, which of the orange amps would you say can do hardcore? I mean, by default, without a boost, perhaps the Jim Root Terror, maybe the Dark Terror, the Rockerverb, of course, and the TH30 is also great for heavy stuff. All right, so that was the OR15. By the way, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this tone adventure without any tones. Okay, we're moving on to the next amplifier. Oh, wait. Richard Safer, is the orange TH30 suitable for industrial metal? I guess. We're going to get to that amplifier in a minute. First, we're going to check out the orange Tiny Terror. The orange Tiny Terror. The OG lunchbox. I got this amplifier used for about 250 euros a couple of years ago or so. And man, the Tiny Terror is such a cool amplifier. It has enough gain for a good heavy rock tone, maybe even metal, but I would recommend a boost for metal. It has 2 EL84s, in the power section, a couple of preamp tubes that are smashed into the power section quite hard, so it has a lot of that power section distortion sound going on, I believe. And it had just a really nice, edgy, and raw sound to it. In my opinion, everybody should have a Tiny Terror. It's such a fun little amplifier to have, and it's really too bad that that they don't make them anymore. However, the Tiny Terror channel is also featured in the Dual Terror, which has more headroom and all that stuff, and the Fat channel as well. So it's not completely gone, but still, the Tiny Terror is a great amplifier. Okay, so Marijn, let me see. Converge. What's the difference between the OR15 and the Jim Root? That's a cool question to answer because the PCB inside of the Jim Root is very similar to the OR15. They only have small component value differences or something. I would say that the the Jim Root Terror is a little bit better suited for heavy rock and metal by default. And the OR15 is a little bit softer and rounder sounding by default. Both have plenty of gain, but for heavy stuff, the Jim Root Terror is the way to go. But you can hear them side by side in my recent orange comparison video, so check it out to hear the differences for yourself. All right, let's move on, right? So we just talked about the Tiny Terror over here. Now we are going to move on to the 8030. This is my most recent orange amplifier, and I still need to do a full in-depth demo and review video on that amp. It's a great amplifier, quite different from all my other oranges. It's much more suited for classic rock and, you know, sort of indie type tones, mid gain, crunch. You know, it can do rock, but not really hard rock and metal. It doesn't have enough gain. And I believe it's also the only orange amplifier that I have that has a tube rectifier in it. So it has a nice sort of spongy sound to it. It has 2 channels. Of course, it's a 30-watt amplifier made in the UK with 4 EL84s in the power section, so it can go quite loud. By the way, Jimmy Page used the 1-channel version of this amplifier on the O2 reunion thing. And the bottom channel is a bit warmer and more round sounding, and the top channel has a bit more bite and a little bit more gain. So you can set them up quite nicely so that one channel is your rhythm channel or your clean channel, and the other is your sort of main or lead channel. And yeah, it's just a great classic rock sounding amp. It sounds quite vintage, you know, it doesn't sound high gain at all, really. So again, I featured that amplifier in the orange comparison, but I'm going to do an in-depth demo and review of that amplifier sometime soon if I get to it. But yeah, it's a really fun amplifier with a very specific sound, so it does not sound like any other orange that I own, which is interesting and which is one of the reasons why I wanted it. Let me see if there are any questions about the 8030. Kapinks, they don't make the Tiny Terror anymore. No, they do not. They even put a little documentary on the Orange YouTube channel about that. Very fun little documentary to watch, by the way. Someone says the Jim Root Terror is the same as the Dark Terror. No, they are not the same. They're voiced quite differently. The Dark Terror sounds a bit more scooped and fizzy. Check out my orange comparison to hear them side by side. I gotta see. Frank G, what kind of overdrive can you recommend for the Laney Ironheart? It's really kind of dry sounding. Any overdrive will do. But if you want to, you know, this is just a basic way to answer this question. But if you want to retain the character of your amplifier and not change it too much, just add gain, perhaps the Electro-Harmonic Soul Food will do. Or the Dirty Tree by Peppers, if you put the EQ controls to neutral. But if you want that sort of pushed mids kind of tone, like a Tube Screamer, then I always recommend the Laney Steel Park pedal, which is just an amazing overdrive pedal. Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water and eat a couple of nuts before we move on to the next amplifier. Again, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm enjoying this. I like talking about my amplifiers. I'm going to eat a couple of nuts, some cashews, and then we're going to continue. Okay, so the next amplifier on the list. By the way, guys, thank you all for showing up in the chat and helping me answer some questions in here. That's really helpful. I appreciate it because I do not have enough time to answer all of your questions right now. So the next amp. We just talked about the 8030. Now we're going to talk about the Orange Dark Terror. I just mentioned that amplifier a couple seconds ago. A couple years ago, I had another Dark Terror. And for some reason, that one sounded really off to me always. It was way too fizzy and way too scooped. So a little while ago, I got another one. I had sold the old one. And this one sounds much better. I did a couple of videos on that one as well. And of course, you can hear it in my recent orange comparison video. But it's a great high gain amplifier in a small compact form. Of course, 15 watts like the Tiny Terror, but with an extra gain stage, I believe. The shape control is quite interesting. When you put it to one side, it's very scooped sounding, and when you put it to the other side, it's very MIDI sounding and quite dark. And there's like a spot in the middle at around 12 o'clock that really works for me. I don't like to move it around too much, to be honest. So for me, it's not very versatile in that regard. However, it has a great range of gain. So the cleans are quite nice, actually. And the high gain tones, you can get a lot of gain out of it, and you can make it sound super sludgy and filthy. It's not a super tight amplifier, which is a theme that will carry on through all the orange amplifiers. All the orange amplifiers are not really tight and aggressive by default, although you can make them sound much more tight and aggressive with a boost or an EQ or stuff like that. But the Dark Terror is a fun little amplifier if you're looking for something simple that sounds quite doomy and high gainy by default. Really, really cool amplifier. And it sounds quite similar to the TH30 over here. But that one has a bit more headroom, of course, since it has a 30 watts. But yeah, it's like the evil twin brother of the Tiny Terror. Get the Tiny Terror for rock and roll and stuff like that, and get the Dark Terror for the high gain stuff, basically. So yeah, that was the Dark Terror. Any questions about the Dark Terror? Clayton Gwen, have you tried slaving different amps, preamps into the power section of other amps? No, I have not. Terror Snow, is the SV20 part of this? Yes, it's up here. We're going to get to that later, I hope. All right. I'm going to try that slaving into power amps sometime, probably, but I have so many ideas for videos that I need to do first. Okay, so let's move on. And let's move on to the orange Rockerverb 50 Mark III. Haha. Also one of my favorite amplifiers, made in the UK. This is the 50 watt version, of course. 2 EL34s in the power section. Man, this amp is amazing. This is like the best orange that there is for me. The clean channel is gorgeous. The attenuator is handy. The reverb is fun. But the high gain channel is just so nice. It sounds so thick and it's great for rock. And you can even get metal tones out of it. I did a video where I tried a baritone guitar through it with a boost and without the boost. And with the boost pedal front, you can make it sound pretty mean. But this is like my favorite orange. If I could only keep one orange, it would definitely be the Rockerverb, because it just sounds absolutely huge. It's an amazing amplifier. Like I said, made in the UK, it's not very affordable, but it is worth the money. It's one of those amplifiers that really is worth the money. Again, it's very simple. A theme that also carries on throughout all the orange amplifiers. You know, 3-band EQ for the clean channel, just a 2-band EQ, so treble and bass, and that's it. But man, it sounds great. The Rockerverb, what else can I say about it? I mean, I've done plenty of videos on it, and I will make more videos on it. If you want to hear how the Rockerverb sounds, just check out all my videos, and I hope you will be satisfied. Let's see. Thanks for the comments, guys, and thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to keep moving here because at some point I'm going to have to eat dinner with my family. So next up is, the orange Rocker 15 Terror back here. The orange Rocker 15 Terror. It's a very fun little amplifier. It's a 15 watt amplifier as well. So again, a power section of 2 EL84s. However, it has an extra clean channel. So it has 2 channels. The Tiny Terror and the Dark Terror and the Jim Root Terror and the OR15 all have 1 channel. But this is the one of the only lunchbox amps aside from the Brent Hinds Terror that also has a clean channel. Just 1 control, that gain control or level control. But it's a really nice clean channel, very well suited for drive pedals, actually. So it's a great channel to put your, your Friedman BEOD in front, or whatever pedals you can think of. Basically, it sounds very natural. There aren't a lot of components in between the input and the output when you use that channel, so it's very pure sounding, which is great. And the overdrive channel is slightly gentle, when compared to some of the others. It's not super metal sounding. It has a very warm and sort of fuzzy sound, so great for indie and, you know, classic rock and even heavier rock styles. But it's not as heavy sounding as something like the Jim Roots Terror or the Rockerverb. If you want to hear this in comparison to the other oranges, again, check out my recent orange comparison video in which you can hear them all side by side, if you guys are interested in that. I guess that's all that I can say about the Rocker 15 Terror. Really fun little amplifier. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those amps that's great for playing at home and for recording and stuff like that. Also because it has 2 channels, which makes it quite a handy amplifier. What's also cool, by the way, about the orange amplifiers is that most of them, even the dirty channels, you can get great clean tones out of them when you lower the gain. So that's pretty cool. Okay, we're going to move on to the orange TH30H. This is a 30-watt amplifier made in China. These two are made in the UK, and this one is made in China, alongside all the Lunchbox amplifiers. And like I said earlier, this has 4 EL34s in the power section, so it has a bit more power and headroom than something like the Dark Terror. Now, the dirty channel on the TH30 is almost exactly the same as the Dark Terror, so a lot of gain, great for modern styles. Not super tight and focused sounding. Again, it doesn't sound like an EVH or an Engl. It has that orange sound. But of course, you can tighten it up with a boost, which I'm also going to try out soon on the channel in a to boost or not to boost episode, just for fun. But yeah, a lot of gain. But when you compare the TH30H to the Rockerverb, which you can also hear in that comparison video, you will hear that this one sounds a bit more scooped and sort of fizzy than the Rockerverb. The Rockerverb has more meaty mids, basically, has more solid mid-range, whereas this one sounds just a bit more scooped by default. If you guys have any questions about the TH30, let me know. Judo Koala, I have the Dark Terror, great amp. Do you think upgrading to a TH30 is worth it for the headroom and the clean channel? I do, yes. If that is what you need for gigging and stuff. I mean, if you just want to use it for recording, one channel at a time, basically, then it won't matter all that much. But if you need the amp to have more volume, more headroom, and also, you know, a different channel to choose between, then yes, the TH30 is great. Plus, it has the big orange head shell, so it looks very cool, you know. Capinks, which orange Lunchbox amplifier would you recommend to get the Rockerverb tone? The Jim Root Terror, because that's basically a mini Rockerverb. It's not exactly the same, but it will get you quite close. Again, hear them side by side in my recent orange comparison. All right, let's move on, people. Let's move on. And by the way, Clayton, I'm going to compare the Kraken to some other amps on the channel soon. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for that. All right, the next one is an interesting one. The next one is the orange Brent Hinds Terror. It looks very similar to the Rocker 15. You can't really see it from this angle, but they share the same PCB, and they also have the same sort of shell and same controls. However, the Brent Hinds Terror, which is, by the way, discontinued, sounds very, very different. It sounds kind of like a modded pissed off plexi or something. It sounds very raw and quite bright, whereas the Rocker 15 Terror has a more gentle sound, like a more fluffy sound. The Brent Hinds has a bit less gain, funnily enough, so it's not a super high gain amplifier, but it's basically a pissed off plexi style amplifier. And again, the clean channel or the natural channel has a very sort of neutral sound to it. So again, great for pedals. I guess that's all I can say about the Brent Hinds Terror, since it's kind of similar to the Rocker 15 Terror in terms of features, but just a more, you know, aggressive and raw sound. So it sounds really pissed off, which is great. Okay, let's just move on straight away to the Dual Terror, the orange Dual Terror. We got a couple more oranges to go before we move on to all the other good stuff. The Dual Terror, oh man, this is one of my favorite orange amplifiers for rock. As I said before, it has the Tiny Terror channel, but then with 30 watts behind it, so more headroom. And the Fats channel has a bit more mid-range push, so that's great for classic rock, really great for classic rock. And the Tiny Terror channel is a bit more raw sounding, and since it's 30 watts, it can get pretty loud, and it's such a nice amplifier. I mean, the orange dual Terror, I recommend that to a lot of people who like the orange tone. Not for metal per se, unless you put a boost in front of it, of course. But for rock and everything, you know, stoner, doom, you know, all that stuff, the dual Terror is really, really nice. A really nice amplifier. 15 watt Rocker 15 versus Jimru Terror. What's the difference? Well, you can hear the difference in my recent orange comparison video. Check it out. The Jimru Terror has a bit more gain, and it sounds a bit more modern by default. I hope that helps. All right, so the Jimru Terror is where we're at right now. I just discussed the dual Terror, and now we're moving on to the Jimru Terror. So this is basically your mini Rockerverb. This is the Rockerverb. This is the Jimru. They don't make the Jimru Terror anymore. They haven't made them for a couple of years. It's a 15 watt amplifier, single channel, 3-band EQ. It can do cleans, but it's basically a gain channel. It does not sound exactly the same as the Rockerverb, at least not the same as my Rockerverb. Maybe it's based on the Rockerverb Mark I or the Mark II. I'm not sure. But it has a great tone, very meaty, you know, very typical orange, but a bit more suited for heavy styles by default when compared to something like the Rocker 15 Terror or the Tiny Terror. And they are also quite affordable in the used market, I think. I think you can find them for about 250 euros or so, at least around here. And it's definitely worth that money. Jimru Terror, fun little amplifier. Not a lot of headroom, of course. 15 watts, 2 EL84s in the power section, of course. But if you want a mini Rockerverb, this is the one to get. Chris Nicolaitis, thinking to buy a Jimru Terror to blend with the PRS MT15. Any thoughts on that? That could be cool because they're voiced quite differently. That could be a very interesting combination. I have not tried that myself, but that could be cool. Okay, we're going to keep on moving. I'm going to shift the camera a little bit since we're going to check out some amplifiers that are over there. Are you guys still alive? Are you guys still with me? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. And again, thanks for all the support that you guys have given me over the years. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to the PRS MT15. What can I say about this amplifier that has not been said yet? A great little lunchbox amplifier, but it has two 6L6 tubes in the power section. Nowadays, they come with 5881 power tubes. They're not exactly the same as 6L6 tubes, as far as I understand, but they sound similar, I guess. Anyway, mine has the 6L6 tubes. It has a ton of headroom. It's 15 watts, but it's actually more like a 30-watt amplifier. The clean channel is very nice, very clean, kind of Fendery, like a Fender Twin type of sound. And the high gain channel is really nice. It's one of those amps that always works. Whenever I use it, it's like, damn. I also used it in my Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s review that I posted this week. And it sounded really good in that as well. It's great for, I mean, the clean tones are great for cleans, obviously. But the clean channel can't really get to crunch at all. And I don't think that the lead channel is great for crunch. The lead channel is great for anything that requires a good amount of gain, in my opinion, just because of the way it's voiced, you know. By the way, personal freedom. I'm not sure how close the MT15 is to a triple rectifier, but I did compare the MT15 to my dual rectifier like a year or two ago on the channel. Look it up if you're interested. Capinks, have you ever compared the MT15 with the Archon? No, I've never tried an Archon. I would love to. Okay, so that's the MT15. I mean, everybody knows this amplifier, right? I mean, if you're looking for an affordable amplifier that's compact but does a great high gain tone and a good clean tone, there you go. It's the MT-15. What can I say? It's a winner. It's a winner for sure. Let's move on to the very interesting and unique Hughes and Kettner, or Hughes and Kettner Black Spirit 200, which is this amplifier over here. Now, this is actually a solid state amplifier. It does not have tubes, but it does emulate the sound of tubes. It has that sagging control, which emulates tube sag and compression, the power tube sag and compression. And it's a very cool amplifier. I mean, it's very similar in terms of features to the GrandMeister Deluxe, which I discussed earlier. So it has the clean channel, it has the crunch channel, it has the lead channel, and the ultra channel as well. It also has the built-in boost. It has the built-in noise gate. It has the built-in reverb, delay, and modulation effects. And the tone is quite similar to the GrandMeister Deluxe. I don't think that it's meant to sound exactly the same, but it can be dialed in to sound quite similar to the GrandMeister. I did a comparison, actually, of the Black Spirit 200 versus the GrandMeister Deluxe maybe a year or two ago, which was interesting. I think it's a great solid-state amplifier. It's quite portable, since it is also fairly lightweight, so you can easily take it in your backpack or whatever and bring it to a gig or something. In fact, I think it would be a great amp to gig with because of all the features that it has and the 200 watts of solid-state power, of course. So the Black Spirit 200, to me, is an impressive amplifier, especially considering the fact that it's not a tube amplifier. Very interesting indeed. What else can I say about it? It doesn't sound exactly the same as a tube amplifier. It has its own thing going on, but it has a great thing going on. I really like it, actually. I think that Hughes and Kettner is a cool company in general, and I think that they make great products. They do a lot. All right, let's... hey, Tony, what's up, man? Hey, what's up? I hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in, man. I got your dirty tree up here. Here you go. There you go. The dirty tree. Tony Peppers is the man, folks. He created one legendary, a couple of legendary pedals, in fact. Okay, let's move on because I need to make sure that I can make dinner for my kids. I just got to eat a couple of nuts. Sorry about the picture quality. I can't do anything about that. It looks fine on my end. Okay. Okay. Next up. The EVH 5153 EL34 50 watt. Now that's a cool amplifier. One of those amps that everybody knows as well. I also did a full in-depth demo and review video on that amp quite recently. Yeah, I mean, it's 50 watts. It has two EL34s in the power section, obviously. It has 3 channels, clean, blue, and red. The clean channel is very clean, squeaky clean, like very, how do you say it? Very sterile in a way. It does not have a lot of character. The blue channel is very interesting. It's not very tight. It's very loose and sort of more vintage sounding, almost kind of similar to the Wong's, kind of like a Soldano sound, actually. And the red channel has so much gain and so much low end and so much just heaviness. So that's like, if you want an amplifier that's great for tight and heavy tones, you can't go wrong with the EVH amplifiers. The resonance control on the back is also very handy for dialing in your low end. And when you crank it, it can get super thick sounding. Absolutely amazing amplifier that I'm sure many of you guys have heard of. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. Very cool amplifier, especially for metal, but also great for other rocky genres, especially considering the fact that the blue channel is quite differently voiced. Some people don't like that. Some people want the blue channel to sound very similar to the red channel. But for me, as a recording guitarist, primarily, I like the fact that that they're voiced quite differently. Brunen G, why do you tape up your strings? Hello, by the way. Hello. I do that to kill the unwanted resonant noises. If I play a lot of high gain stuff and I do like palm mutes, ching, ching, then in between the chunks, you can hear, ding, ding. You can hear those strings resonating past the nut. That's why I tape them off, or I put some foam underneath the strings there, just to mute those unwanted noises, basically. Okay, so that was the EVH 5153 EL 3450 watt. Again, if you want to see a full in-depth demo and review on that amplifier, check out my video on the channel. Next up is the Hughes and Kettner TubeMeister Deluxe 40. Sort of more stripped down version of the GrandMeister Deluxe 40, which has a lot of bells and whistles, just like the Black Spirit. So this one only has 3 channels, a clean channel, a crunch channel, and a lead channel. And again, I did a full demo and review of this amplifier on the channel as well. So it's similar in size. It's the same size as the GrandMeister, the same weight, you know, good transformers, 4 EL84s in the power section, so plenty of power. But it does not have a presence and resonance control. It just has 2 3-band EQs, one for the clean channel and one for the crunch and lead channels shared. But the lead channel sounds really good on that amplifier. It sounds kind of like a modded rectifier in a way. It's a bit more mix ready by default, I would say. The cleans are great, and the crunch channel is also very cool, very barky and bright. I think it has the red box, the eye out as well, so it has some cool functions. But if you want, you know, a Hughes and Kettner that does all of it, then you should look at the GrandMeister Deluxe 40. But in terms of tone, the TubeMeister Deluxe 40 is really good, especially for metal, I'd say. So yeah, that's the TubeMeister Deluxe 40. What else can I say? It's a quite simple and straightforward amplifier. Quite different in terms of features than the GrandMeister or the Black Spirit. But if you want that Hughes and Kettner tone, but with a more straightforward interface, then the TubeMeister Deluxe 40 is a great amplifier. See how it sounds first. If you can try it in a store, of course, try it out first. Or check out my demo to hear how it sounds. Okay, now we're going to move on to another Hughes and Kettner that's kind of hidden back here. It's the AmpMan Modern. It's a kind of pedal board amplifier. It's based on the Black Spirit line, but in pedal form. It's a 2-channel amplifier. It has a clean channel that you can also push up to a nice AC/DC crunch, and then a high gain channel. And yeah, it's a pedal, so you put it on the floor, but it has a built-in power amp. I don't remember what the wattage was, maybe like 50 watts at 4 ohms or something. I'm not entirely sure, but it's got plenty of juice for a pedal amplifier. It's about this big, and it's actually great for putting on your pedal board for small gigs or whatever. And it has a built-in boost for adding gain, and it has an effects loop, I believe. And it has resonance and presence controls and a boost function as well for boosting the level. So if you're looking for something to put on your pedal board with 2 channels and a bunch of extra features like a boost and a loop, then the AmpMan Hughes and Kettner amps are quite interesting. Oh, and they also have that sagging control, you know, to emulate that tube amp response. So that's also kind of a cool amplifier. It's a bit hidden there, but I did an in-depth review and demo video of that amp on the channel recently as well. Check it out if you're interested. Okay, let's move on to these little guys. The orange Micro Terror and the Micro Dark. Those are the smallest amplifiers that I have. And I basically got them when I wanted to do my big orange comparison. Because yeah, it made the number higher of amps that I could feature in that video. And they're just very fun little amplifiers, fun little amps to practice through. And they have solid state power amps, and they're both 20 watts, I believe. The Micro Terror is not really a high gain amplifier. It is more of a crunchy amplifier. I would not recommend it for metal, really. And they don't sound the same as the tube amps. I mean, they have 1 tube inside of them, but that doesn't make a big difference, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, fun little amplifiers. They don't cost a lot of money, and they look cute. The Micro Dark has a bit more gain, of course, so it's obviously better suited for heavy styles by default. It does not sound exactly the same as the Dark Terror. Yeah, it's a bit more solid state E sounding. It's a bit more flat in terms of dynamics than an actual tube amplifier, but still fun little amplifiers. If you want to hear those micro amps side by side with the tube counterparts, check out my recent orange comparison, because in that video, I've already said this a couple of times, but you can hear all the orange amps side by side in a full mix and isolated as well. All right, so we just discussed the micro oranges and the AmpMan by using Kettner. Now we're going to check out the Mesa Boogie, or the Boogie Mark V 35. Dead Trickster, Mesa is so expensive in Europe. It is, and it's getting even worse. But what can you do, right? Hello from Russia. Hello, Echo Wave. How are you doing? Mesa, Xander says, Mesa is the only amp you can worship the devil with. Okay. I need to try that sometime, I guess. Okay, so the Boogie Mark V 35. I knew that I wanted one of the Boogie Mark amps because they are so legendary. When I think of the Mesa Boogie Mark amps, I think of Metallica, the classic Metallica tones, Dream Theater, of course. Those are the main big ones for me, of course. Now, this is the 35-watt version of the bigger Mark V, which has a bit more modes and options to it. But this is still a very, very versatile amplifier. I featured it in a bunch of videos, and it's going to be featured in a comparison, a high gain shootout between this one and this one very soon on the channel as well. Just a fun little video. And we've got two channels and a graphic EQ. The graphic EQ is, of course, very necessary with a Mark amplifier to shape the tone, usually to scoop out the mids in my case. Two channels, but each channel has 3 modes. The first channel has the clean mode, the fat mode, I believe, and the crunch mode. Now, the crunch mode on the first channel, you can even get a nice high gain crunch out of, which is cool. The clean modes are nice as well, especially the fat one. You can add a little bit of overdrive on that channel nicely. And then channel 2 is where all the magic is at for the modern high gain tones. It has the 2C plus mode. I recently did a video on that as well to see if I could make it sound super brutal, which luckily worked. It's a finicky amp though. I mean, sometimes it takes a lot of work and effort to make it sound just the way you want it. But when you do, it's very rewarding. So sometimes I get what you're saying, Floop-de-doo, that it's a love it or hate it amplifier because, you know, it's a tweaker's amp. You're going to need to tweak it and tweak it and tweak it in order to make it sound great. But when you get it right, it sounds great, right? The Mark IV mode has a bit more juice and harmonics than the 2C plus mode, so it's a bit more high gain sounding by default. And then the extreme mode, which is also based on a Mark IV setting, I believe, on the actual Mark IV amp, is just the biggest sounding, the biggest low end, plenty of gain, plenty of hugeness. So if you're into metal, I think that the extreme mode is great to start by default. The extreme mode, the name of that is a little bit misleading, I think, because it sounds as if it's different than the classic modes, but it's actually, like I said, based on certain settings on the Mark IV. It's a 35-watt amplifier with 4 EL84, so it can go pretty loud, loud enough for gigs, I think. Very cool amplifier. What else can I say? Classic. Dead Trickster. Okay, so 47 amps. Can the XFX replace them all, as they say? I don't know. I've compared the XFX to my amps a bunch of times on the channel, and it can get very close, but it can never sound exactly the same. That's a long story, but I like my tube amps, and the XFX is great. If you don't have a lot of budget or room to buy all these amplifiers, of course you can get a lot of tones out of it, and it's a great device, great effects. But it's still modeling. It's still modeling. If you're into modeling, then that's great. Okay, we're going to continue to this big one over here, the Peavey Invective 120. Misha Mansour's signature amplifier. This is basically the modern hot rodded 5150 or 6505. again, one of those amplifiers that I already featured in a full in-depth demo and review. I really like the Invective. It's very versatile. It has 3 channels. It has a clean channel, very clean sounding with a lot of headroom. It has the rhythm channel and the lead channel. Now, the rhythm channel is a bit more tame sounding than the lead channel. Of course, we've got the presence and resonance controls, but we also have the built-in boost, which is great for the, which you can use on the rhythm and lead channels, or the crunch and lead channels, I should say. We also have a built-in gate, for those super tight percussive things. So those features are great. So you can make it sound a bit more modern and aggressive by default. And we also have 2 effects loops. And we have a switcher that allows you to store presets. We have a master boost function and all sorts of good stuff. It's a really interesting amplifier that does it all with a ton of features on it. I really love it, the Invective. If you want an amplifier that's great for metal, that does it all, with the built-in boost and the 2 effects loops and even a 9-volt adapter for your pedals, it's a great amplifier. It's basically a hot-rodded, modded 6505. What else can I say? It's an awesome amplifier, and I'm very happy to have it in my collection. Now we're going to move on to, one question from Xander. Is Metallica playing with amps or the XFX? In the studio, they usually use real amps, and on stage, they use the XFX. Okay. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite amplifiers for metal, the Engl Fireball 100. I already discussed the Fireball 25, but this is one of those amplifiers that if I need a good metal tone, I know that when I grab the Engl Fireball 100 that it just will be right. With the default settings, with all the EQs in the middle, sometimes people think it sounds not big enough in a mix. It gets lost in the mix, some people say. But the key is to crank up the mids and crank up the treble controls to 2 o'clock as a starting point, and be careful with the presence control. And then the amp really starts to open up, and it has a huge ballsy tone with a very nice mid-range edge, with a very nice growl. That's why it's so good for metal and also for down-tuned and extended range guitars. It just makes those guitars very articulate, aggressive, but not in a harsh way. It sounds very pleasing, but still very growly and ballsy. The clean channel is great, very sparkly. The crunch tones are cool as well when you crank the gain on the clean channel and add the mid boost function. So what else can I say? This is 100 watts, 4 6L6 tubes in the power section. Amazing amplifier all around. If you're looking for a great metal amplifier, this is the one to check out, in my opinion. One of the ones to check out. It has a shared EQ, though, so for playing live, it's a little bit limited, perhaps, for some people. I'm probably going to get an Engl Powerball 2 on the channel soon, which has a lot more controls and switches. I'm really looking forward to that, because it should be very interesting. Now we're moving on to the Peavey 6505. We all know the Peavey 6505, right? The classic, the monster. The funny thing is that I did this in-depth demo on the 6505 a couple of years ago, and that's actually my most viewed video on the entire channel. It has like 125,000 views or something. And it's like, some people call it a one-trick pony, but it's more versatile than one might think. The cleans aren't amazing, but you can still get some great tones out of the clean channel. The rhythm channel is cool, very fluffy and less tight and modern sounding than the lead channel by default. And of course, the lead channel, tons of mids. So it sits in the mix very, very nicely. It's right there. It's really hard to make the 6505 drown out of the mix. It's just such a huge and iconic sounding amplifier. What else can I say? 120 watts, 4 6L6s, K-Low. Do you think there is a difference between the US-made 6505s and the Chinese-made ones? I don't think so. I don't think there is a big difference. F. Say, did he review the Kraken yet? Not yet. We'll get to that. Thanks for all the comments, guys. Really appreciate it. And again, if anybody asks a question here that I'm not able to answer, feel free to chip in and help people out. All right, guys, I'm going to continue. Okay, so we just did the Peavey 6505. What else can I say about this amplifier? Now we're going to move on to the Peavey Invective MH. Let me turn the camera a little bit. So the Peavey Invective MH, so that's the mini version of the Peavey Invective over here. It's a 20-watt amplifier. It's nice and tiny, nice and compact. It has the tone of the Invective. It has the clean channel and the lead channel. Of course, it has less headroom because it has two EL84s in the power section instead of the 4 6L6s, obviously. But still, it has a great range of tones because of the switches. There's a gain boost switch. The boost switch that makes it sound more tight, like a tube screamer up front. It has the gate as well. And it has a switch that lets you kind of select between a sort of more rhythmy sound and a lead sound. So you can even get more sounds out of the dirty channel. So that's really, it makes it a lot more versatile, actually. It sounds very ferocious, very, modern. It's a great lunchbox amplifier for modern metal. Really, really nice. I really like that amplifier. What else can I say? Again, not super loud, but if you want something with a great clean tone and some versatility in the dirty tones, but especially great for metal, then the Invective MH is a great amplifier to get. And it also looks really cool with the blue lights and everything. It's a very cool little amplifier. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the Wong's 1987 HW, which is basically a plexi clone, a 50-watt plexi clone. It's a hand-wired amplifier, just as the 2204 HW. Now, I did full in-depth demo and review videos on both of these amplifiers on the channel, if you're interested. Again, I talked about Wong's before, but they're made in China by the Wong's family in their custom shop, made by hand, wired by hand with quality components. So they don't have an effects loop. And they have that for a reason, because they want to keep the signal flow inside of the amplifier as pure as possible. Because the non-master volume amps, especially, so this one doesn't have a master volume controls. They have a very raw and pure sound, like those old plexis. Very interesting tone. It sounds like nothing else that I have in my collection. Very raw, very cool. Great for classic rock and low to mid gain tones. Very nice. I'm not a plexi expert by any means, but I like to mess around with that amplifier quite a bit. But as you can imagine, it can get very, very loud. Since it does not have a master volume, you have to crank the volume up all the way to get your gain. And the jump ring of the channels is also quite fun and interesting to blend the channels together. So yeah, if you're looking for something that sounds like a vintage plexi, a 50-watt vintage plexi with two EL34s in the power section, that might be the amp for you. Then let's move on to the 2204 HW, the Wong's 2204. Now, this is obviously a JCM 800 clone, also 50 watts with two EL34s in the power section. This does have a master volume control, so that's handy, of course. It enables you to turn it down a little bit. I recently did a little comparison of these two amplifiers on the channel, where you can hear them side by side in a crunch setting. And you can make them sound a little bit similar when it comes to those classic crunch tones. But the JCM 800 or the 2204 has a bit more edge and a bit more mid-range push to it. So slightly more gain. Ever so slightly more modern sounding, as you would expect from a JCM 800, of course. So this one sounds very raw and filthy. And this one just sounds a little bit more refined, but also very loud, 50 watts. They're both very heavy, so they have big transformers in them. Again, for that classic Marshall tone, the Wong's hand-wired series are great amplifiers to get for those vintage tones. I don't have a lot of amplifiers that do those vintage tones very well, but these two do that excellently. Excellently, is that a word? I'm not sure. Floop-to-do, which Wongs is a better pedal platform? It depends on your needs, really. I'm not really a pedal platform player myself. Maybe I guess the 2204 would be more manageable with the master volume control. And if you want it to sound very, very clean, just use the low sensitivity input. Then it stays very clean. Okay. To the next amplifier, the Peavey 6505 MH. What a cool little amplifier. Again, very affordable. 20 watts, 2 EL84s in the power section. Not a ton of headroom, but it sounds like a 6505, but just a bit smaller with a bit less headroom. You know, I've compared them side by side a year or two ago, and I might do that again for a more recent comparison. But I think it sounds absolutely great, and that's one of those amps that sounds great when you're playing at home at a lower level. It just sounds great at lower levels. It really gets that 6505 tone under your fingertips at reasonable volumes, basically. So, and it's also affordable. So, for example, if your kid wants an amplifier to play metal on, 6505 MH is a killer amplifier to get for your kid or something like that, or for practice or whatever, for recording. Again, it's a great little amplifier, and it's also affordable. And it does that 6505 thing. But again, a little bit less headroom, a little bit less oomph in the lows, of course, because it has less headroom, right? Now, let's go to the victory section. Oh, and by the way, Fadi Masamiri, still waiting for the boosted EVH Blue channel video. All right. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Okay. Let's do the victory Super Kraken. The Super Kraken. Release the Kraken. All right, guys. I need to eat a couple of nuts. Sorry. A couple of nuts. And then I'm going to continue babbling. Sorry. Marvin asks, have you ever played a VHT Pitbull? I have not. I've never played a VHT amplifier, but I would love to. Okay, so the Victory Kraken, Victory Super Kraken VX100. What an amazing amplifier. I did a full in-depth demo and review on this amplifier recently. Check it out if you're interested in all the details and bells and whistles. But it's a very unique sounding amplifier, quite versatile. There we have a clean channel. And by the way, it's 100 watts. It's the smallest 100 watt amplifier that I've ever tried, basically, or seen. So it's very powerful. It's also quite heavy. So we have a clean channel, or we have a gain 1 and a gain 2 channel. Gain 1 is basically clean and crunch, and the gain 2 channel is the high gain channel. It sounds kind of 5150-ish. It has a very nice tight edge, raw edge to it. Great for modern metal and stuff like that, the high gain channel. And the gain 1 channel, the clean channel is kind of cool, but not amazing, but it's great that it's there, kind of like that. But the crunch mode is very versatile. With the preamp focus off, which I'll get to in a second, the preamp focus is kind of like a tube screamer. It sounds quite loose and big, you know, like a Marshall-ish, like your JCM 2000 type amplifier. With the preamp focus on, it sounds much more focused, kind of like a Friedman. And to make it sound even more tight, you can enable the power amp focus on the back. It makes the low end more tight. Then you can make it sound like a Friedman, basically. So, it has a very wide range of tones. But I especially love the gain 2 channel, the high gain, crunchy, raw. Also great for extended range guitars. In my recent 9-string review video, I tried that amplifier with my new Schecter 9-string, and it sounded absolutely killer with that. So a very cool amplifier. 100 watts, powerful, versatile. You can control it via MIDI, effects loop, all that good stuff. So, and again, if you're interested in knowing more about this amplifier, check out my recent in-depth demo and review. Easily one of my favorite modern amplifiers as of right now. And it's also unique sounding. Anytime I put this in a mix, it's like, boom, it sounds so huge, but in a cool and unique way. It's not another one of those 5150 type clones or something. It really has a unique, very huge mid-range with a very big bottom end. So the very, very cool and interesting sounding amplifier. Let me see. Okay, let's just continue. And then if I have enough time at the end, I'll answer some questions for you guys. Then we have the Victory Kraken V4 amplifier, guitar amplifier. This is the pedal board version, but this is the one with the hybrid amplifier, so the solid state power amp. I think it can reach about 40 watts at 4 ohms. And at 16 ohms, it's about 15 or 20 watts or so, but it's pretty loud. And it has 2 channels. It has the gain 1 channel and the gain 2 channel. It does not have the clean mode, so it's kind of like a crunch channel and a high gain channel. I also did a full in-depth demo review of this pedal as well, or amplifier, I should say, with some extended range guitars and stuff. It's a really interesting amplifier. It sounds great. And again, it's one of those amplifiers that is just very handy for putting on your pedal board for if you want a very compact setup, but with a power amp. It also has the 2 notes thing inside of it, so you can load IRs. It has an effects loop. It has a line out and stuff like that. So it's one of those very handy, take it in with you in your backpack types of amplifiers with that very modern Kraken sound, of course. So very cool amplifier. Of course, I prefer the full tube Victory Super Kraken because it just has all the functions and all the mojo. But if you want if you want that tone, but in a smaller form for your pedal board, then definitely look these guys up. And then if you're at a gig and the amplifier head that you had ordered or whatever isn't working, just plug this straight into your cabinet and you can go. That's kind of cool, right? Okay, I'm just going to continue, guys. I see some questions, but I want to make sure that I'm going to reach the end. So the Laney Ironheart 60. I already discussed the Laney IRT-Studio, but this is, of course, the 60-watt head version with 2 6L6 tubes in the power section. And again, very, very versatile amplifier with a unique tone. The gain tones, as I said, with the other amplifier are somewhere in between a Marshall and a 6505. So not as modern and aggressive sounding as a 6505, but also more modern sounding than a vintage Marshall. So somewhere in between. Great for anything from clean to heavy rock. Also great for metal, but not as modern sounding as something like an EVH, for example. So not super tight by default. Of course, you can put a boost up front. But yeah, so this one has the wattage control, so you can turn down the wattage. We also have a sort of presence control. I think it's labeled tone. We have reverb and also the dynamics control, which is basically to control the looseness of your low end. It's kind of like a depth control, basically. Again, built-in boost. It just adds gain. It doesn't really change the character. It just adds gain. Clean channel, very nice clean channel. I really like the clean tones on the Ironheart. Rhythm channel, great for rock, crunchy tones, of course. And of course, the lead channel, which is great for high gain tones. It has a very wide sound, so it fits the mix really nicely. And again, what I said about the studio version, I really like the fact that the EQ controls have pull options so that you can change the voicing of the channel. You know, you can make the amp sound quite different when you mess with the EQ. So it's a very interesting amplifier in that regard as well. And they are also quite affordable, actually. So I really recommend them. However, like I said, if you're into super aggressive tight metal, perhaps consider getting a boost along with it, like the Pepper's Dirty Tree. That should really do wonders for this amplifier. I should do a video on that soon. To boost or not to boost with the Laney and then use the Pepper's Dirty Tree in front of it. That should be fun. Okay, let's move on here. The EVH 5153 LBX, the first version. So this is a 15-watt version of the EVH 5150. They've also released the LBX2 and the LBX Stealth. I have not tried those. The Stealth seems very cool, to be honest, because it has the clean channel and the red channel. Now this one only has the blue channel and the red channel. So it's a gain amp. It does not have a clean channel. It cannot really do clean tones. The blue channel has a bit less gain than the red channel, of course, so it's great for rhythm. And the red channel has a lot of gain. It's quite tight sounding. You know, the EVH amps, especially this one, they are very tight sounding, very focused and aggressive sounding, which is cool, but it's not really something that you can dial out, if that makes sense. Not easily, anyway. I mean, an orange amplifier, for example, those have a bit looser and a bigger low end, and you can put a boost up front or an equalizer up front to take some of that low end out to make it sound more tight. But when an amplifier pre-filters all that low end out to make it sound more tight, and it's kind of hard to put it back in, if that makes sense. But if that EVH sound is your thing, then the EVH amps are great. And it also has the resonance control on the back just to add a little bit more low end oomph. Of course, it doesn't go as far as the big boys, but it's a great function to have. I really like this amplifier. I mean, it sounds like an EVH amp with less headroom and a little bit less oomph on the low end, but still, it's a very cool amplifier. And to be honest, I would love to try the LBX Stealth. Quick intermission. Thank you all so much for tuning in and hanging here with me. I'm talking so much that my throat is getting very dry, but I also have to go to the bathroom, so I don't want to drink too much water. So thanks for hanging out, guys. We have a bunch of amps to go until the end, and at the end, I'll do my best to answer some questions for you guys. But until then, I'm just going to keep on going. Quick note. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already, because that really helps the channel out. Basically, the channel, this is my world. This is my passion. This is what I do. You know, it's my job. It's my livelihood. And I really need your guys' support to keep on doing this. So all the support that you've given me so far, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And yeah, press the like button, press the subscribe button, and please come back for more content in the future. I really appreciate that. This is my heart and soul. This is who I am. This is what I do. And I hope you guys enjoy my content. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to carry on with a controversial amplifier, the Blackstar HT Club 50 Mark II. I quite like this amplifier. It's a quite good amplifier. And Blackstar gets way too much hate. I mean, I kind of get it. They're not amazing, but it's a good amplifier. This is a 50-watt amplifier. It has two channels. It has a clean channel and a dirty channel. The clean channel has two modes. You can kind of make it sound like a Fox amplifier. Thanks, Xander. I appreciate you too. You can kind of make it sound like a Vox amplifier or a Fender amplifier with the mode switch. And the dirty channel, you can either make it to sound a bit more classic and loose, like something like a Marshall, for example. And you also have the hot rodded boosted mode. And with that mode, it kind of sounds as if there is Dave, I like my nuts. I like my nuts. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep eating my nuts. So yeah, the high gain mode makes it sound more metal by default. It sounds more boosted, but it's when you use that mode, it can get a little bit harsh in the 3K area. So you got to be careful with that, with the EQ and stuff. It does not have a presence control. It does not have a depth control. Sometimes with this amplifier, I miss that a little bit. Overall, I think that the clean channel is great. Both options are great. And the overdrive channel, the normal mode, so the more organic, martially sounding mode, sounds just fine. The boosted mode needs a little bit of tweaking for my taste, although you can make it sound great with some knob twisting and stuff like that. Of course, I did a full in-depth demo and review of this amplifier on the channel as well. Do check it out if you want to hear how it sounds. And guys, I don't know if you're aware, but a couple months ago, maybe like 9 months ago or so, I also did a video with 42 amplifiers in one. I think it was called One Riff 42 Amplifiers or something. And that's a cool video to hear most of these amplifiers together side by side, by the way. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I also recommend checking that one out, just so you can hear most of these amplifiers in a high gain setting side by side. Could be a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera a little bit because now we're going up there. Let me see if I can raise my body a little bit so you guys can still see my face, my beautiful face. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do the last section right now, the marshals. And then at the end, I'll answer some questions. Okay, guys? So keep your questions until the end. Otherwise, I won't read them. Okay? So we're going to start with the DSL-20HR. A very cool amplifier. Maybe the most affordable high gain amplifier that I have. It has two EL34s in the power section. We have a clean channel and a high gain channel. It doesn't do the classic crunch very well. So it's especially great for high gain. So if you're a rocker that plays heavy rock and metal and stuff like that, it's a great Marshall to get. And it's also affordable. And it has reverb, but the reverb sucks, to be honest. It has presence and resonance controls, so you've got some extra shaping options as well. We've got the tone shift that no one ever uses because it sounds quite bad. It's kind of a mid-scoop, but it's way too drastic. But yeah, you can make it sound really good, and it's a very bright-sounding amplifier with plenty of gain, and it really cuts through the mix in a very cool way. Really cool amplifier. Great for punk, great for metal. Put a boost up front to make it sound even more tight, which I did recently on the channel in a to boost or not to boost video, by the way, which was fun. I also did a full in-depth demo and review of this amplifier recently on the channel, so check it out for more information and more tones about this amplifier. But yeah, if you're on a low budget and if you want an amplifier that does high gain well, not super tight like an EVH or an Engl, a bit more organic and fat around the lows, but still really bright and with plenty of gain, then the Marshall DSL-20HR is a very cool amplifier to get, to be honest. And it's, again, it's affordable. So yeah, a lot of people like that amplifier. Okay, we're going to move on to, I'm pointing at the Silver Jubilee. Now, that's the 2525H, I believe. That's the model number. And I've got a sort of limited edition version with the silver something head shell thing. It looks a little bit different than the normal one. The normal one has the regular Marshall name, and this one has that sort of vintage Marshall thing and a kind of different Tolex. But the mini Jubilee, 20 watts or 25, I believe 20 watts, yes. It's kind of your hot-rodded JCM 800. It has more gain, a lot more gain than a JCM 800. We'll get to the JCM 800 Studio in a minute, but of course, the Jubilee. So yeah, if you want a JCM 800 type of tone, but with more options and more gain, this is a cool amplifier to get. Like I said, it has more gain, but it also has a different tonal character. Like the JCM 800 has a very barky and transparent, crunchy tone. You know what I mean. that JCM 800 tone. Quite bright and articulate, I guess you could say. And the Jubilee sounds a bit more round, with a more, round distortion, a bit more warm sounding in general. And the EQ controls are very reactive. If you crank the low end, for example, there's a lot of low end. And the mid control has a very big range as well, and the presence control. So it's a very interactive amplifier when compared to the JCM 800, which is way more subtle on the EQ. So it can do more than most of the other classic Marshalls, and that's why I like it. You also have that input clip thing, which activates the diodes. It makes it a little bit tighter sounding, as if there's a subtle boost up front. You've also got the clean channel, so you can switch between the two channels. So it's also more versatile because of that, of course, which is great. So if you want one of the smaller Marshall lunchbox amplifiers that does it all, so to speak, then the Jubilee Mini is a great amplifier. Keep in mind that it does have its own voice going on. It has its own sort of flavor because of that more saturated tone, but not in a very bright way. So in a warm and big round way, so to speak. Very cool amplifier. I need to use that on the channel more. In fact, I need to do a to boost or not to boost video on that amplifier on the channel soon. That should be fun. We're getting there, guys. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 amplifiers to go. Let me adjust the camera. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the SC20H. So not the Mini Plexi, but the JCM 800 Studio first. It's a classic. 20 watts, 2 EL34s, like all the other small Marshall heads. All 4 of those have EL34s in the power section. They're all quite lightweight when you hold them, so the transformers are quite small. They don't have a ton of headroom, but great for practice, recording, playing at home and stuff. So that's something in general. But the SC20H does that JCM 800 tone quite well. Before I got this one, I never had a JCM 800, but I had an idea in my head of how I thought it should sound. And when I plugged it in for the first time after I ordered it, I was like, where's the gain, But it's just a crunch amplifier. It's not meant to be a super high gain amplifier. And it does that crunch thing oh so well. In fact, this week I released my Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s demo and review. And I used that amplifier with that guitar, and it sounded just perfect. Now, of course, in comparison to the Wongs has more headroom. So if you need something in a similar price range, but then hand wired with a lot more headroom, then you might consider the Wongs. But less headroom, 20 watts, the classic Marshall logo, that classic Marshall JCM 800 tone. It's a very cool amplifier, and it sounds great with the tube screamer up front, of course, as well. Very cool amp. Now we're going to move on to the Mini Plexi, the SV20H. Whatever I'm going to say about this amplifier is quite similar to what I said about the Wong's 1987 HW, which again is the hand-wired Plexi style amplifier. Very raw sound, very pure. The SV20H sounds a bit more tight. It's a bit brighter and a bit more snarly, a bit more barky, so to speak. Like this one sounds very big and kind of warm in a way. Still has that Plexi sound, but this one has a bit less bottom end. I've never played a big Plexi, so I can't really comment on that. I'm not sure if the Marshall Plexis are thin. And I wouldn't say it's very thin, but it's very classic sounding. It doesn't sound huge like your whatever Mesa Boogie or whatever. And since I'm mainly a heavy rock and metal player, it's always very interesting to me when I plug into one of these amplifiers because it's such a different world, Very inspiring though, but again, very classic sounding. And with this one especially, what I like to do is jumper the channels just to get more flexibility out of the tones, just to be able to blend the normal and high treble channels together to get that perfect sort of Jimmy Pagey tone. But yeah, very cool amplifier. Non-master volume, so it's going to get very, very loud. You can't really use that amplifier at low levels. It's not going to work. For that, I would recommend the Mini Jubilee because that's much better for lower levels. Okay, that's the Marshall SV20H. Let's move on to the Marshall flagship, the JVM 410H. What an amplifier this is. I bought this one used. A 100-watt amplifier, 4EL, 34s in the power section. 4 channels with 3 modes each. So that's basically 12 channels in one amplifier. It's incredible. And it's the most modern and metal sounding Marshall that I've ever tried or owned. OD1 and OD2 are super high gain on the orange and red modes. In fact, way too much gain. I mean, when I use the red modes on the OD1 and OD2 channels, I have the gain set to 4 at max, not 4 o'clock, but the 4th little line, or the third. So it has way too much gain, but it has 3 modes on the clean channel. So we've got some very nice clean and crunch tones on it, with a lot of classic Marshall tones in there as well as the super high gain and tight modern Marshall stuff. In fact, it's a great Marshall amplifier for 7, 8, and beyond string guitars. So very well suited for down-tuned stuff and very brutal and articulate sounding. In fact, very cool Marshall amplifier. We also have a presence and resonance control. We've got MIDI control. We've got reverb for each channel, individual controls. I've never tried the JS, the Joe Satriani version, but I'd love to. It's supposed to sound a little bit more organic than this one. Yeah, what can I say? A very, very cool amplifier. If you're into Marshall but need to get a Marshall that is very versatile or very well suited for heavy metal without the need of a boost up front, the JVM 410H is the amp to get, basically. And it's powerful. It's loud. It does whatever you need, basically. If you're afraid of knobs and switches, steer clear. Okay. Then we have the DSL 100HR. A very cool amplifier as well. Much more affordable than the JVM. Much more affordable. Let me put it like that. That one is made in the UK, and this one is made in Vietnam, I believe. Now, this is the modern version of the DSL, the JCM 2000, basically. And this is, of course, the big brother of the DSL 20HR that I just talked about. But this one is more versatile because, of course, it has more headroom. And the classic gain channel also has a crunch mode, which is great for that classic crunch. And the ultra gain channel has 2 voicings or 2 modes. One has more gain than the other, basically. And so it's a very affordable amplifier, but it still has a very wide range of tones. A bright and chimey clean channel. The crunch channel is also quite bright. I mean, you got to be careful with the treble and presence controls, of course. And the overdrive channels have plenty of gain, and it's just a very ballsy and cutting sounding amplifier. Not super tight. It has a sort of loose low end again, so it can benefit from a boost up front to make it sound more modern and tight. But overall, I really like this amplifier. The reverb, just as on the DSL 20, is not amazing. I would not recommend using the reverb much, to be honest. But yeah, especially recently, they've been very affordable and on web stores like Thomann. So if you're looking for a Marshall with a great modern tone, great for heavy rock, for clean crunch, the DSL 100 is a great amplifier to get. I like it. 100 watts, 4EL, 34s in the power section, affordable. It does the thing. I recently did a full demo and review of this amplifier on the channel as well. Do check it out if you're interested in hearing more about this amplifier. Now, the final amp in this rack, because I have one more amplifier in my rack under the desk that I won't be able to show you, but this is my JCM 2000 DSL 50, the older version of the DSL 100, basically. So this one is from the early 2000s, probably. Yeah, so this is the JCM 2000 dual super lead DSL 50. So 2 EL 34s in the power section. I got this one used from a guitar store for about 500 euros. And it came with a very nice flight case with a silver Marshall logo on it. It's similar to this amplifier, but this one sounds a bit less modern. It has a bit more of a thick vintage tone. I mean, it's not super vintage tone sounding because it has plenty of gain on the ultra gain channel. The clean channel is pretty bright, just as the other one. The crunch channel is very cool. And the ultra gain channel, as the name suggests, has plenty of gain, but it has a very fat low end, kind of similar to the Jubilee that I mentioned earlier. You can get these on the used market for great prices. And again, versatile, high gain, crunch, and clean. If you want to make it sound very aggressive and tight and gnarly, again, you might need to use a boost up front. I did a video on that, by the way, a boost, to boost or not to boost episode, especially dedicated for this amplifier. Now we've got one more amplifier to go, and then I'm going to answer some questions. But before we do that, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to comment in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for hanging out, guys. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your support. Alan says, good prices on the DSL 50, not anymore. Oh, really? I was not aware. Oh, that sucks. Nike, on the last live stream, you said there is going to be an MT15 video. Yes, I've already finished it, a to boost or not to boost episode, but I need to find a good spot to release it sometime in the next week or two. Stay tuned. Okay, so the final amplifier that I'm not going to be able to show you guys is in my rack under my desk. It's the Marshall JMP1, sorry, the JMP1 preamp. Which is very cool. It's an amplifier that is legendary. It is used by guitarists like Stephen Carpenter from Deftones, Iron Maiden, ZZ Top, and stuff like that. And what I like to do with the JMP1 is run it through the power section of my JCM 2000 because it has the deep control, which is handy to give it a bit more oomph in the low end. I believe that at least one guy from Iron Maiden also does that. He runs his JMP1 through the Marshall JCM 2000 as well. And it's a very interesting sounding preamp. It has plenty of gain on the gain channels, and it has a very nice mid-range sort of honk. So it sounds very present in the mix. And you can also scoop it a little bit, of course, but it sounds a bit more, it sounds kind of like a hot-rodded Marshall, basically. And you can get some great metal tones out of it. It's a great preamp all around. You can also find them on the used market. I thought they were cheap, but maybe not anymore. I don't know. But that's also a really cool amplifier that I got in my rack. And that, folks, were all my amplifiers. I just spent 2 hours reviewing 47 amplifiers. I hope you guys had some fun. I had fun. Now I'm going to stick around for a little while just to answer some questions that you guys may have if you guys want. And then I'm going to eat my dinner. But thanks so much for hanging out so far, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions about my studio, about my gear, about my recording, about my guitars, or whatever. I'm going to eat a couple of nuts and wait until you guys give me some questions. I'm a bit hungry. Thanks, Dead Boss. Okay. 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 Here we go. Kip count. Let me adjust the camera real quick. Note to note chord clarity between the IRT-Studio and Double J Junior. I'm looking at either the IRT or Runt 20, but I know you haven't played the Runt. Looking for something all things rock. Well, the IRT is much more affordable, right? I mean, over here, it's like 1/3 of the price of a Friedman, maybe even less. Double J Junior is very cool, but again, a quite tight bottom end. The string separation on both of these amplifiers is fine, to be honest. I mean, they're both great at what they do. They're great Both great at rock. They're both not amazing for high gain metal, not super modern and aggressive sounding, but great for rock. Great crunch tones, great clean tones, great high gain rock tones. You can squeeze some metal out of them. But yeah, both will do fine. It's a tough one. I mean, yeah, they have their own flavor going on, you know? Friedman sounds a bit more refined and tight, and the IRT is a bit more raw and broad sounding, if that makes sense. A bit more loose in the low end, perhaps. Tyler, think you will ever try to snag a Diesel VH4? I would love to, but it's something that I really cannot afford right now because they are not affordable. Maybe one day a VH2. That would be a little bit more within my reach. But the VH4 is, I mean, it's a dream amp, but it's out of my reach financially. Tim Stocker's top 3 nuts: cashew nuts, and cashew nuts. Andy Bungert. I came late to this. Didn't see anything Rev. Interested in hearing your thoughts on them, if any. I've never tried a Rev, but I would love to try a Rev. Yeah, maybe one day on the channel. Who knows? Andy also asks, do you have a room full of matching cabs for some of these heads? I do not. I've only got 2 cabinets, this orange and an Engl right around here, and I hardly ever use them. I use my load box setup with IRs. That's just my jam, so to speak, as the young people say. Craig, what is your current white whale amp? The one that you don't have that you most wish you did? That's a great question. One of them is coming to the studio soon. I won't say which one. I guess the Diesel VH4 is one of those amplifiers. Out of reach, but definitely wish I'd had one. Also, the using Kettner, a Triamp Mark III. That's also one of those amps that I would love to have one day. Just a dream amp. I can dream about it, but it won't help me get one. Dead Boss. Why do you prefer the Laney Steel Park instead of the Caitlin bred Naga Viper and the Fortin stuff? I have never tried the Caitlin bred Naja Viper, and the Fortin. I've never tried those. The Laney is just a great tube screamer like pedal, but it has a bit more functionality. So it has the bass and the treble shelves, so that makes it a little bit more versatile than my Maxon, which only has the tone control. And it also has 3 voicings, so you can change. It's basically 3 tube screamers in one. I just like how it sounds, and I like how it sounds when I tweak the knobs. It just does everything that I need from a tube screamer like pedal. The new Pepper's Dirty Tree that I got recently is also very cool, but it's a different type of pedal, as it's a clean boost with a high and a low shelf. I'm going to use that more on the channel as well. All right, let's see. Good appetit. Thank you. Hey, John, question. Are you ever going to do a shootout and review vids for cabinets, like in the style of your amp-related stuff? I did a couple, but I always use impulse responses, and this is a very long discussion, but look, IRs sound exactly the same as the real deal. That's just my opinion based on my experience. But whenever I make these videos where I compare the IRs, which is a very, very valid comparison in my eyes, people like to complain. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do more in the future though, because I think they're fun. They do show how much a cabinet sound can have an impact on the guitar tone. And it's very interesting to hear the speakers side by side. So I like them. Clayton, thank you for the stream and all your videos. Thank you. Really like your work. I got to run, but I'd say that you should look into a VHT Pitbull or Deliverance or Elmwood amps too if you want more to collect. Interesting. I will keep that in mind. Thank you. Will J Rockstar. Have been a Mesa Boogie player for most of my years, but not in love with my virtual Boogie sound. Recommend me a good 4x12 cab IR that will help me bridge the gap a little bit more. How about either the York Audio 212 Mesa cabinet or the oversized 4x12? Those are both solid. I use them all the time. By the way, next week I'm going to release a very cool video that in which I try to emulate the sound of Korn, the band Korn, and I used my rectifier in that video, and also the Digitech XP100 and an LTD 7-string, and the York Audio oversized 4x12 V30 cab, which sounded just great for that Korn sound. Little plug for my upcoming video. Daniel, any chance of seeing a Laney IRT SLS on your channel? SLS? I don't know. It's not something that I would buy. It would have to come from Laney. If they want me to make a video on that, I would. So you can always send them a message, and sometimes that really helps. Thank you for the suggestion. John, cashews have a nice tight mid-range. I would agree. Krober 38. Do you own any combo amps as well? I do not. Killing Roots, what reactive load box do you use? I primarily use my Red 7 amplification Amp Central. I love it. It sounds great. Wombat Studio, Amp Central, impossible to get in the USA right now. Luca says not until the end of the month. Well, then you got to wait a couple of weeks. You'll live, right? Do you load the IR in the Red 7 or you use the line out? I use the line out and then either use my XFX for the cabinet processing or just a plugin in my DAW, because that's handy for me because it allows me to change the IRs after the fact if I want to. MT, do you have a small practice amp? I do not, aside from all the heads over here. I was thinking about getting something like a Line 6 Spider to put by my TV so I can jam through a little amplifier. I don't know. Let's see. Dead Boss, the Dirty Tree is the 1433. I know it's based on that, but I haven't tried the 14, so I can't really comment on the 14, you know? Jack Rex, I would say IRs would be better for a comparison video because anyone can download the same IR. That's true. That's true. That's absolutely true. That's a good point. Thank you. Andy Bungert, are you much for pedals beyond boosts? I see the drop, which is cool, but I don't know what other effects you like in pedal form. Well, I have a couple of wah-wah pedals on the floor down here, and I have a very big collection of whammy pedals, but I don't use a lot of effects in general. For some reason, I just don't like to use a lot of effects. But sometimes I use a reverb pedal in the loop or some reverb in post, or some delay. But if I had to choose one effect pedal, I guess it would be a Digitech Whammy, because that's my favorite pedal. Tyler, do you have a video explaining how you run your real amps through an IR? I made a video last year probably about my signal chain and about how I record my guitars. I might do another one in the future soon. But it's very simple, basically. I have my XFX3 set up over here, which is also my USB interface. And in the loop of the XFX, I have my amps with a load box, and that signal then goes through the amplifier and back into the XFX, and then into a noise gate, a built-in noise gate of the XFX, and then into a cabinet block. And sometimes I bypass that cabinet block when I record the guitars, and then add the IRs later in the DAW for if I want to change them around, you know? And that's it, basically. I got some special things going on in the chain, though. I've got humbuster cables, and I've also got an iDefender USB device in between my PC and my interface because my new computer was transmitting unwanted noise through the ground of the USB cable. And that iDefender Plus device filters out the ground noise. So that's also very important for me, but it's not something that I've mentioned before. HJ Perez 1, difference between natural and minimum phase on York IRs. The difference is that when you blend the minimum phase, they sound more in phase with each other. And when you use the natural phase, you'll get small phase artifacts that also happen in real life. So it just has to do with the blending. You can experiment. Just blend two mics and compare that with the minimum phase to the natural phase, and you might hear a small difference. And that's it. Jubilee Kiss, I never know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. In your experience, how close is the Line 6 Helix Engl amp model to the real one? I should do a comparison video on that. Pretty close, I think. I've never compared them directly, but I might do that because it's fun. Whew, a lot of questions. I'm going to answer a couple more questions before I tap out. Let's see. Kostis Sigonis. Hi, at some point, can you make a basic mixing tutorial how to mix guitars and drums, etc. and a DAW? Your production sound is very good. Thank you. Maybe. Could be fun. Sometimes when I do those type of videos, they do not get a lot of views, which makes it a little bit less motivating for me to do. But I might. I've got this band project coming up soon, which has real drums and stuff, and I might do a video on those drums because it's fun. I'll keep it in mind, though. Thanks. But you can also hire me for mixing. If you want my sound on your music, just hire me. Dennis, hi John, thank you for all your stuff. Did you ever try a Framus Cobra or Wizard? I have not. I'd love to. Tyler, that sounds like a crazy setup. I've been getting into amp sims lately and would love to look into this. I'll do a video on it soon about my signal flow and stuff. It's not really complicated. In fact, it's the most simple setup for reamping and using tube amps in conjunction with your modeler. And it also allows me to record DI tracks, so it's really handy. Craig Kreider, can you recommend a bedroom player rig, say 1500 or less, that would be compact, flexible, and versatile? I'm thinking any of the Peavey MHs, the AmpMan Modern, or the DSL20. How about the GrandMeister Deluxe 40? That will do anything. A couple more questions. Wombat, have you tried the Boss Tube Amp Expander? I have not. I can't comment. Alec Archer, what audio interface are you currently using for recording? Mostly my XFX3, sometimes the Helix as well, which is also excellent. TJ, hi John, could you do a video about the Rockerverb 50 with your Schecter Damien Platinum 9 or with an 8-string? Greetings from Germany. That could be fun, sure. I have so many videos that I want to make. Peter, have you ever tried the Blue Guitar AmpMan? I have not, but I'd love to try one. All right, guys. I want to hang out, but I also have to go. So I'm just going to say thank you all so much for hanging out. I really hope you enjoyed it. Again, I'm really thankful for all your support and thankful for you guys for hanging out and your questions and your comments. Really appreciate it. Please come back for more future videos. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, I hope. So any support is very welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much for hanging out, guys, and thanks for your comments. And I'm repeating myself here, but I just really appreciate all of you. And I hope you had a good time here hanging out and talking about amplifiers. So I hope to see you guys soon. And thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Seeing your comments right now. Thanks so much. See you guys soon, okay? Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.